Bad grammar. Bad, bad, bad. Hello! Welcome back to my channel. Belated Happy New Year! Today I'm going to be doing a wrap-up of some of my reading stats from 2020 and then going over some reading goals that I have for this coming year. Last year was my first year tracking my reading goal, and I didn't actually start until June, so all of these statistics are over just like 6 months. Interesting. So if you're less interested in the wrap-up and more interested in the goals, I'll try to put a timestamp, and if I forget to do that before I upload it, I will definitely put that in the description box below. Cool, let's get into it. So since I started tracking my reading in June, I read 78 books. It's what, like an average of like a book every 3 days. For context, I am unemployed due to the pandemic, so I have a lot of time on my hands. Great. And that is across 64 authors. So I read multiple books by some authors, and 60 were new to me. Is that right? Well, I guess like I can think of 2 of the authors that were not new, and I read multiple books by them, so that kind of makes sense. So my average page length was 300 to 400, so I think that helped with how many books I read, was I wasn't reading particularly long books. 78% were fiction, 22% nonfiction, 57% were from my library, which is really cool, and 43% were owned, and of the owned, 17% were purchased or acquired. So a lot of the owned books I read, I was already in possession of before I started tracking my reading. 32, again, we're going off the number 78. 32 were ebook, mostly from my library. 31 were physical. 14 were audiobook, which is cool. I never listened to an audiobook before this year, and it's great if you find a narrator that you like, and I also find that audiobooks help me a lot with nonfiction. And 2 were graphic novels. I thought I would have read more, but I guess I'm good at like not plowing through my graphic novels. Cool. So, of the 64 authors, 52% were female authors. So that's cool. Wait, that doesn't add up to 100. Shit. I did my math wrong. So I fucked up on percentages of author genders, but the vast majority were female, and I read 2 non-binary authors that I know of. I try to do like a cursory search of all of my authors, but sometimes some of those personal details just aren't public, and that's okay. I read 6 authors that I know identify as queer. 1 that I know of is neurodivergent, and 2 that I know of are disabled. I read 45% white, which is, I mean, less than half, so that's not bad. 21% black, 13% Asian, and everyone else is less than 10%, which I would like to improve. I'll get into my goals, but I would like to improve upon those numbers a little bit. But alright, I've got kind of like a baseline data on those to compare to going forward. Of my 78 books, the vast majority were fantasy. It was like 42%, which is not surprising. YA was the next largest category at like 22%. And then the next 2 categories were sci-fi and science. But I thought I would have read more sci-fi, because I feel like I like both sci-fi and fantasy kind of equally. But I thought I read more sci-fi because I read 2 astrology astrophysics books. So I think they kind of lived in the same part of my book mind palace. Only half of the books I read were translated from another language into English. The half is from the complete works of Thomas Rivera, which I will talk about when I film my December wrap-up, whenever the fuck I get to that. But in that book, he has some content that is originally written in Spanish that's translated, and then he has some stuff that's originally written in English. So I counted that as a half. I think I'm most proud of like how much I used my library. A lot of that is because I finally figured out how to connect my Kindle to the library, and while I don't think I will ever like completely give away all of my physical books, I definitely see the appeal of ebooks beyond just like the minimalist and space-saving aspect. But ebooks really help me stay focused on my reading, because I am someone who like, I'll look to see how many pages are left in the chapter, or when's the next illustration coming up. I get easily distracted in the physical book, and ebooks kind of really help me focus a little bit, so it was really cool to learn that. I didn't do a lot of analysis of the content of books I read. I just kind of ran out of steam for crunching numbers. But I do think it was really varied. It was a lot more varied than I expected. Definitely because I pushed myself to read a lot more nonfiction than I usually do. But I feel like my reading tastes were mostly trying to get through physical books that I already owned, especially unread ones. So that kind of, I was picking up books because I had them, and less because it was really my genre. Or I was reading through a lot of heavily recommended stuff that I discovered in BookTube, which most of it, like, I really liked, and I'm glad for it, but I know that compared to how my reading has been in the past, I've read a lot of stuff this year that I would have described as outside of my comfort zone, so that's cool. All right, let's get into my goals, plans, guides for 2021. So I'm gonna set my reading goal to 100 books. Now, given that I read 78 books in 6 months, that might seem really low, but I set that number in anticipation of being able to go back to work. I think that's gonna cut down on my reading time a lot. So I would like to read 2 books a month that fit some kind of like diversity awareness. I don't want to get too diversity bingo box checky, but I do want to make sure that I am reading from a variety of perspectives and making sure that it's kind of spread out across the year and not just focused on when I participate in like a Black History Month readathon or something. I definitely think it's going to be super achievable, but I just want to have some kind of number minimum in there and to see how I do, I guess. I want to read at least one reread to unhaul a month, which I might want to come up with a better name for it, but I have like a running list of books on my shelf that I don't remember enough about them to be able to tell you why I'm keeping them. So I want to reread at least one of those a month, which a lot of them are like YA books, which is going to be very doable. But I want to make sure I do at least one of those. Partially to clear out books and make room for new books, but also my goal is to be able to say something about every single book I own about why I'm keeping it. And I have a bunch of books that I've read, but I can't do that. So I'm definitely not going to get through every single one of those books this year, but hey, if I get through 12 of them, that's a good chunk. It's a good chunk. So again, a very achievable goal, but I want to make sure that it's spaced out and not just all crammed in at one time. Over the year, I want to read 10 non-white Eurocentric authors. Again, like that's kind of vague, but it's okay, it's going to tie into my next goal, which is to read 10 books translated into English. So I think there's going to be a lot of overlap in those books. I don't necessarily think that's going to result in 20 unique books, but I was really inspired by my very minuscule participation in the Reading and Translation readathon, and just realizing that like I hadn't really read any other translated books this year, and I don't read a lot of authors that are not from white Eurocentric cultures. So I think 10 is achievable. That's you know, less than one a month. Thankfully, because of the Reading and Translation readathon and following other YouTubers, I have quite a bit of a list on my to-be-read shelf. So again, I think that's going to be very achievable. I think can overlap with the like reading 2 books a month that fits some kind of... I hate kind of the idea of like a diversity quotient, but like I gotta start somewhere. And I'm not yet at a place where I am confident that it's going to happen at a level I want organically. It's a process, and that's okay. And with that, I want to read 4 books this year in Spanish, and they could be either originally written in Spanish or translated from English into Spanish. I have a couple of like YA books. I've got like A Wrinkle in Time, The Secret Garden, Holes. So like I have some of these books, and I'll kind of keep my eye out for other books that can fit this category. And it's a very accomplished feeling to be able to read a book in Spanish for me, if I find the right reading level. So I think, yeah, like one book a quarter is going to be, again, achievable. I want to read 50% of the current titles on my TBR. I have a list of 23 titles. I've already read one of them. Yay! You know, I can definitely add books to it. I can choose to declutter. I should say read or declutter. Read or declutter 50% of what is on there right now. Given that it's like only 23 books, at least 2 of them are graphic novels. Yeah, I think that should be reasonable, and I think that's going to help make sure that I don't just have stuff that's sitting on there for years and years and years and years. It's like at some point I gotta make up my mind, am I gonna read this or not? And if I'm not, pass it on. It's great. And then of new books, books that are not currently in my possession as of right now, I want 50% of those to be from my library. Given that I read 50% of my books from last year from my library, I definitely think that's doable. Of that 50%, at least 4 of them were audiobooks of books that I already owned. So keeping that in mind, I'm juggling a whole bunch of numbers and it's difficult, but I think keeping that in mind, that I might be doing some audiobook rereads of books I already own. I think the 50% is doable, but not necessarily a shoo-in without a little bit of paying attention to it. I think like keeping it kind of like in percentages rather than like numbers is good, because it's like I don't want to ban myself from buying books. And again, like as much as I hope that I'm able to go back to work, I don't really know what's going to happen. So I'm not going to put hard numbers on stuff like that, but it's just a goal of like, make liberal use of my library. Library is great. And I need to figure out how to suggest books, because sometimes I'm tempted to buy something because I can't find it from my library. Especially with translated books, I found that a lot. I would like to read 25% nonfiction. Last year I read 22%, so I think that that's achievable without, I think, diminishing the fact that I just fucking love fiction and I love fantasy, and that's what makes me happy. So, I had a really great, I went to visit my folks yesterday and I had a really great discussion with my dad talking about, like, mostly I was talking about stuff I had read and, like, the new Jim Crow, but, like, it was amazing to be able to, like, have some foundation to be able to, like, talk about stuff intelligently. And, you know, I made the joke of, like, I only know, like, 5% of this issue, and he's like, you know what, that's probably 4% more than everyone else around you. It was great. I like learning shit. Learning shit is great. My last 2 goals. Film monthly wrap-ups in anticipation of getting back to work and being more busy or something. I'm only going to hold myself to make 1 video a month, and at least my monthly wrap-ups. I'm not going to put any more guidelines or restrictions on, like, how thorough the wrap-ups have to be. It could just be a 3-minute video of me saying, these are the books I read and these are their authors, and a video. I would like for them to be more than that. But I would like to, at least in the coming year, continue to make at least 1 video a month and at least have it be the monthly wrap-ups. I'm very likely going to make more. It's just my first year making goals like that, and we're just going to kind of see how I do. And then my last goal, which I've already accomplished, is to make a Storygraph account. If you don't know what Storygraph is, it's a in beta but almost finished website application that's kind of like Goodreads for tracking your reading, but it's Goodreads with an actually well-developed algorithm to recommend you new books. Also, it's not fucking owned by Amazon. And then it also has, like, a lot of really good algorithms for tracking, like, your type of reading. So not only does it track, like, number of books and page counts and etc., but also, like, genre and, like, what are the descriptors of the types of books you read. Do you read books that are funny or dark or adventurous or informative? So I'm going to link 2 videos down below. One of them is by Lena Norms. Her video is the one that, like, really convinced me that, like, this is a really cool thing and I would like to support it. And the easiest way for me to support it is to talk about it and participate in it. So I will link her video, and then the other person, ArtisanGeek, is that her name? I can picture her. If I got her name wrong, I'll put it here, but I'm pretty sure it's ArtisanGeek, and she made a video about that as well. So I will link both of those and the link to my profile in the description box for you to check out. And that's my goals. Yay! So thank you for joining me for this video. Tell me what you're reading. Tell me what your goals for the coming year are. Have you made a video about your reading goals? I would like to check it out. Anyway, I hope you have a good rest of your day. I encourage you to go out into the world and be curious. I will have links for my Storygraph account and other social media in the description box if you would like to connect with me elsewhere. Bye!